Okay. Okay. We are getting started here. Let's just share the screen here. Okay. We are on Daf, officially Daf Samachay in the days, 65b. We're just going to start with like 4 words. Actually, it's 5, sorry. On Daf Samachay Amid Aleph. 65a, last 3 words. We're really doing 65b, Samachay in the days. Okay, so before we start, tell a story, also from Rabbi Yisrael Brog, who is the grandson, I believe, of Victor Miller. That's all. So there's a following story about Rav Shach. Rav Shach was the Rosh Shiva in the Panovich Yeshiva in Bnei Brak, many years. He lived to a very old age, I don't know exactly, I think over 100. And he, one day, he had people came to see him to ask him questions, get advice, or guidance. And Rav Shach, a certain fellow by the name of Yaakov Chiker came by. What's his name? And he asked him what he wants. He do for him bracha, whatever. He said, your name is Yaakov Chiker. It's not unusual, not a common name. He says, is your father by the name of Moshe Chiker? Yes. Chiker, I think. Chiker. Chiker, something like that. And he said, says yes. And he asked him what yeshiva he learned in. So he learned this from yeshiva. And where he's from? He said, I know your father. He said, he got very excited. Rav Shach got very, very excited. He says, where is he right now? Is he alive? He says, yes, he's alive. He's in a certain living facility or something like that. And he said, okay, great. I'm going to go see him right now. And Rav Shach grabbed his hat and coat. And the assistant says, Rosh Hashiva, where are you going? He was like 98 or something. And I traveled to Shalayim on a bus, or 2 buses. I don't know how much they had to do back then. He says, maybe we could try to work something out, get a ride for you, maybe you have to come here. So they asked this Rav Yaakov, is it possible for you, when it would bother you, I know the state of your father's health, is it possible he can come here to visit Rav Shach? He says, sure, I'm sure he could do that, not a problem. He likes to get out. And so he said they arranged a day for him to come, a certain time during the day. And so this Rav Yaakov brings his father, Rav Moshe, to visit Rav Shach. They come to Rav Shach's house, and there's a white tablecloth. It's spread out with a festive meal. No streamers, but it was quite a festive spread they put out there, and it looked like it was a yontif. And he sits down, and they start talking. He gets down, and Moshe walks in. Shach stands up for him. He greets him. He sits him at the head of the table. They start reminiscing. He talks with the greatest respect. They have a meal together. And he walks him out to the car or the bus, whatever it was. He walks him out, and he gives the utmost respect imaginable. So Rav Shach's assistant says, afterwards, he says, Rosh Shiva, I don't want to, pry, but who is this Rav Moshe Chik that you gave him so much respect? So he says, I owe all my learning to this Rav Moshe. So what does Rosh Shiva mean, all my learning? He says, when I was a bacher, Rav Shach's life story is very interesting. I don't know, I've heard little tidbits here and there. I have a book on it, that would be interesting. But Rav Shach said the following. He said, said the following. He said, Rav Shach's story is very interesting. He was very poor. He was younger. He got married to a very poor girl. They had to run away from Europe. They had no money, so they just jumped on the train and went. All his friends had assets to sell, and he left. He went there to sell. I don't say no problem, but he had a very interesting life, Rav Shach. Anyway, so Rav Shach said when he was younger, he got married. He started to lose his drive to learn. Learning takes effort, as we all know. It's not a passive activity. You have to really put your heart and soul into it and do it. So he started losing his cheshek, his real desire to learn. And he kept trying, and it was going on for quite some time. So he didn't know what to do. So he came up with a plan. Only Rav Shach decided that if he taught a shir in the yeshiva, where Aaron Kotler was the son-in-law of Ezra Zalman Meltzer, the yeshiva was, trying to remember, blanking on it right now. The yeshiva was Kletsk. There you go, Kletsk. Right in the town. Of importance because there's a yeshiva there. But so they asked Rav Isser Zalman Meltzer, and he said they asked my son-in-law Rav Shach. Rav Shach said, I can't. I have to give a shear. I can't give away my shear. So they came up with an idea. He said, I'll give a lower shear. The guys who are not ready for your shear, said to Rav Aaron Kotler, I'll give the lower shear. So that he would agree to. The problem was the guys didn't agree to that because they were trying to get into the higher shear. They didn't want to admit that they have to go to the lower shear to get to the higher shear. It was a cultural kind of a thing, especially back then. Today, many yeshivas have like start off this at 18 and 19, go this year. So, but this wasn't like that. So, we didn't know what to do. So we went to this Rav Moshe Chiker, we just mentioned. He was kind of one of the older, perhaps he was even married, guys who was involved with the Bachrim there to get them to learn, advise them, talk to them in learning. He was an influential fellow. He was like a little bit of a mashgiach, I guess we'd call it. And he went over to the boys and convinced them it's worthwhile to go to Rav Shach's shir. He organized it for Rav Shach. Rav Shach had a shir. But once Rav Shach had a shir, he knew that if he had a shir to give, he had to be motivated to learn. Whether he was interested or not, he had to prepare for a shir every day. So he said he devised this idea himself, Rav Shach. So this idea, and that's how he's able to give himself the drive to continue learning. He did so for many years until he had to run away from Europe and come to Eretz Israel. So he said this Rav Moshe Chiker really saved his spiritual life for him. He advanced him in his learning. He owes him so much. That's why he made him this lavish party and felt so much gratitude to him. They were contemporaries. I don't know exactly age-wise. I don't know if he was 98. He could have been 90, 92. Shach was not 65. He wasn't. Right. He was an older man, and this actually was an older man too. I don't know, 98. I made that as a Shach lived a very old man. Anyway, the lessons for the story are many. First of all, whenever you read about stories of Gedolim, the amount of hakaras hatov, gratitude they had to other people is amazing. So one after the other stories of gratitude they had. They felt such a debt of gratitude to other people. I heard the stories that can go on. We have to remember that back. The stories are endless of gratitude. Because the sign of a great person is often gratitude. So that's something we should strive for as well. This time of year, we're trying to make improvements. Also, it's a lesson in Rav Shach's how to approach learning. Learning is like many tasks in life. If you ever tried anything, whatever it may be, whatever it is, working on a certain midah, or exercising, or losing weight, or trying to learn something, even not Torah learning, especially Torah learning. There's ups and downs, and it's the times when you're doing great, there's times you're not so great. Shach had the wisdom to understand that that's the nature of learning. Sometimes you don't have the strength. You have to put something in place to give yourself the oomph to keep going. If you whatever it is, whatever mitzvah you do, let's say you have a mitzvah, you give 5 shekel a day to tzedakah. If you have a group of people, for example, that do it every day, they all come to shul and they give their 5 shekel, then you're going to be motivated to give your 5 shekel, whatever the case may be, just as an example. So you have to motivate ourselves some way. You have to take sometimes creativity. Shach certainly had that. That's a good lesson in life on how to approach things. Okay, so that's the story for today. Let's go on with the Gemara. We're on Daf Samach Hey Amid Aleph. We'll start with there, 65a on the bottom. Right here. Sleeping arrangements? Sleeping arrangements, yes. Yes, that's an interesting topic. Yeah. So on the very bottom of 65a, the last 3 words, Samach Vav. Where am I? Oh, 60. Yeah, we're on 65b. We're on 65b. We're starting 3 words before. 5 words before. Yeah. So Amalei Rapabala Abaye. So we're talking about right now. We're talking about clothing obligations and food obligations, the various other obligations the husband has to his wife. Then we'll get to the mitzvah, God willing, today, which talks about some more obligation, what the husband's rights in the wife's money. We'll talk about that as well. Okay, so last 5 words. Amar le Papa Abaye. Papa said to Abaye, you remember, flip the page. Remember, the wife gets 3 pairs of shoes a year on the Chagim, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Pesach, Sukkot, and Shavuos, the way we commonly say it. And but for clothing, it gives her 1 time a year 50 zuz. We'll talk about how much that is actually a year for clothing. So it seems like he's giving her clothing, shoes, at least a lot more frequently than clothing. So the Gemara asks, or actually Papa said to Abaye, "Hi Tana, the Tana of this Mishnah, Shliach Artale Rami Misane." So he's saying that you go out. This goes out. The person doesn't go out undressed but wearing shoes, and that's a literal interpretation. That means that 3 times a year, a woman gets shoes, but she only gets an allotment of clothes once a year. It's a little bit seems disproportionate. You always have shoes to wear, but clothing only once. So Amrle, Abai said back to Rav Papa, Tana, this Tana of the Mishnah, b'mokom harim kod. He lives in a mountainous, hilly kind of place. The lo sagi below tlasa zuge misani. It needs at least a minimum of 3 pairs of shoes that get worn out from the rocky terrain that gets worn out. So they need specifically 3 pairs of shoes. And one theory won't be enough. It's just that they need so frequently shoes because of the place that they live in. And va'agav orchei kamashmalan, and toch kedei, as they say in Hebrew. And just by the way, along the way, the Mishnah is coming to teach you kamashmalan dinesivinhu nihala b'moed, that when you give it to her, you give the shoes, you give it to her specifically on the Yom Tov. You could have divided up 3 times a year in a different way. We're doing it specifically on the Chag. In order to give her Simchas Yom Tov. Simchas Yom Tov for women is clothing. That's the way they have their joy on the Yom Tov, on the festivals. So if you're going to give her 3 a year, you might as well give it to her on the Chag, before the Chag. This way you can fulfill the mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov, of bringing your wife joy for the Yom Tov on those holidays. Okay. Yeah, well, you're supposed to buy clothing. We're going to get off easy in a second. Don't worry. You're going to see you get a price reduction by 1/8 in a moment. Okay. 1 second. Okay. Yeah. Don't spread this one around. Okay. So it continues. We're going to analyze the next part. It talks about clothing. Mishnah spoke about clothing. A kalim shel chamishim zuz. You're supposed to provide for your wife a yearly allotment. Sounds like you give it to her. Not something we do today. We give, they don't purchase clothing for your wife. You let your wife purchase clothing for numerous reasons. Style is a very personal thing, and also size it's not something that we can do. But back then, the men would buy clothing for their wife, 50 shekel worth, 50 zuz worth, and Kalim shel chamishim zuz says. So chamishim zuz is a large amount of money. That's a very large amount of money. So we're going to downplay that a lot. That's like to buy a lot of clothes for that. So Amar Abaye says chamishim zuz pshiti. We're not talking about the tsuri, the zuz that they use in Tyre, in present-day Lebanon, which was 8 times as much valuable as the regular common ones that were used. We're talking about the common zuz, which are worth 1/8 of the ones from Tyre. So it's still a fair amount of money, but not quite that extravagant. It's worth 1/8. I don't know what it is. Is that? Yeah, it's about 6, right? So you can only buy 3 goats. 6 can buy 3 goats. Whatever the amount of land, it's a nice amount. It's hard for us to compare. The Gemara talks about, everyone mentioned the zuz can buy a certain amount of land. I think land today in Israel is a lot more valuable than back then. Because, a little piece of land in Beit Shemesh, it's millions of shekels, whatever. So, whatever, it's 50 zuz, but the common zuz, not the more expensive, far more expensive, 8 times more expensive zuz from Tzur, from Tyre. Mimai, how do we know that? How do we know it's a simple zuz? Because midikatani, we learned in our Mishnah, the medvar marmor, at the very end of the Mishnah we learned, when are we talking about these allotments? We said very specific things. How much flour, how much fruit, how much oil, how much clothes, how much shoes. We said very specific things. Well, who is that talking about? The poorest of people. That's how much they bring. Aval mechubad, someone who's rich, he said mechubad referring to rich, like the Rambam said, akol lafi kvoda, everything going according to his wealth. Right. So we're talking about 50 zuz in clothing for someone who's poor. He has to provide that for his wife. If you're saying it's mamash, as you say in modern Hebrew, 50 zuz, like the real suri, the tire money, tyre, those which are far more valuable. Ani chamishim zuz minole. How does a poor person have that much money, certainly to spend on his wife's clothing? How does he have that? Ella, shma mina chamishim zuz shviti. It must be, we're talking about the much lower currency of 50 simple zuz, or the common zuz, which are 1/8 as valuable, and that, presumably, the ani can come up with. Okay. So that's what we derive from there. So then the Mishnah also said when he's supposed to give the clothes and how much clothes, etc. So we said that you're supposed to give the clothes during the winter, new clothes during the winter when the garment's still thick, it's warm. And as the summer approaches, it becomes thinner. That's from washing, I guess. And then it's more seasonally appropriate in the summer. And then the rags, the leftovers, she gets to keep once she gets a new allotment of clothing the next. Okay, so ein nosen chadashim, quote from the Mishnah. We don't give her new clothes in the summer because it's inappropriate. So Tana Rabbana, but then the Brisa, moser mizonos labal. If there's leftover money from her food allotment, or from the food itself, it goes back to the husband. We gave her a certain amount. She doesn't use it. It goes back to the husband. Moser beloos liisha. Leftover, worn out clothes, the woman keeps. Why? Moser beloos liisha lamala. How come Moser beloos liisha lamala? Why does she get to keep the worn out finished clothing? Why doesn't it go back to her husband? Amar Rachla said, she gets to wear them. She wears them when she's in nida, when she's menstruating. She shouldn't be degraded in the eyes of her husband. As Rashi says, it's about halfway down the Rashi's before the Mishnah. If she wears the same clothing that she wears when she's in nida, that'll be as she does when she's tahor, when she's pure. Rashi says she wears the same clothing that she wears when she's nida, then it's kind of a not pleasant feeling for the husband. But his wife is menstruating. Certainly back then, I guess, that had more connotation. She was tameh and all that stuff. She's still tameh, but there were no hay, but tuma back then, more carefully. So if she's wearing the same stuff, the same clothes when she's pure, it's kind of like, it's not much an association. I'm going to have fresh clothes for her when she's not in nida, so it'll be more attractive, appealing, or pleasant to the husband when I maintain that relationship. So that's why. So Amar Abaye continues. Naktinan, Moser belos almana liyorsh. From this, we derive and conclude that the extra worn-out clothes of an almana that she has liyarshin, the yarshin providing for her, could be her biological kids, could be her stepkids, whatever, are providing sons, could be providing for her when she's a widow. The leftover clothes go to the yarshin. She doesn't need those. Why? Hasam hu delodeskani ba'ape. In a case when the husband's still alive, so we want to give her all those leftover garments to wear when she's in nida, when she's menstruating, so she has different clothes when she's menstruating, different clothes when she's not. So it's more pleasant for the husband. Here, let her wear the same clothes, and it's literally degraded without our intention. It is it's not a necessary thing. We don't need her to wear separate clothes. There's no husband in the picture that's going to look down or be uncomfortable or whatever. his wife is wearing the same clothes as she does when she's in Nida. That's a whole different topic, wearing different clothes for Nida. But yeah, so there's no need to. So therefore, the leftover worn out clothes go back to her supporters, which are the Yershin, the inheritors of the father's of her late husband's estate. They get to go. Okay. So the Gemara continues. It's analyzing one part of the Mishnah at a time as we approach the next Mishnah. All the different things that the husband gives the wife, and it's going to analyze them one at a time. That's a good question. That's a good. It's a good question, especially since yesterday we learned that one of the women came to one of the Rabbanim here and said, I need shiroi, I need silk. I said, why? One of the interpretations, I think, was Talmid Rabbi Yonah, who said that she needs to look good so she can get remarried. And here we're saying not something the opposite, we're saying almost exactly the opposite. So it's a good question. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I guess you have to say what we would give her in this case is not fantastic clothing. We're giving her worn out clothing that she can wear when she's a widow. And she doesn't need that when she's a widow because those worn out clothing are not going to make her look great to her prospective husband, or just to make a distinction between when she's a nida and when she's not. I guess what she really wants is nice clothing to wear, I guess when she's not a nida or even when she's a nida, to look nice. And this doesn't really solve the problem. They're kind of not rags, very worn out clothing. Shmantas, the stuff you wear like to clean the Pesach, that's only purpose in them is that she should make a distinction. This is what I wear in Nida, and I have nicer clothes when I'm not in Nida. So this doesn't need, I guess. Not really clothes you would wear anyway for a potential suitor. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't fall nicely on our ears, does it? It sounds. Well, the point is trying to make is there's no need for her to make a distinction if she's a need or not, but it sounds very harsh. She's a widow. Let her be repulsive. That's sounds terrible. Sounds terrible. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. That's a good question. It has the terminology did bother me too. Yeah, needs further clarification. I didn't see anything on it. I don't see any first one either. I didn't see anything. Let that one fly. Yeah. 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 I don't know. Okay. Let's go on to the next thing the Mishnah mentions. Nosin lam mo kesef. So sometimes the Gemara brings down like a little keta, a little piece, and leave bechula. Really, the bechula we were interested in, but he said the point is that she eats with him Erev Shabbos, Erev Shabbos, as we mentioned yesterday from Rabbeinu Yonah, at least Talmid Rabbeinu Yonah. Perhaps talking specifically about a Talmud Chacham who's in town but is away the whole week learning, so he comes back on a weekly basis. Just the Ramban mentions why does he eat with her? The implication is he's also cohabiting with her, so it's a little bit not appropriate to not have the meal with her Friday night and then just cohabit. Not derech eretz. So that's why he eats too. But in any case, let's analyze this eating. We mentioned this before. Mayocheles. He eats with her every Friday night. So mayocheles. What does it mean to eat? Rab Nachman Amar ocheles mamish means he eats with her. He has a meal with her. Avashi Amar Tashmish means that he cohabits with her on Friday night. So Tanan, or analyzes. Tanan Ochelas Imo, the Leil Shabbos. It says in the Mishnah, that we learned, he eats with her on Friday nights. So Bishlama, it goes well. I understand. According to Lamanda Omar Achila, that the Tana who says, the Amora, Ravashi, who says it's actual eating. I'm sorry, Rav Nachman says eating, actual eating. Achila hainu tekani ocheles. That's why it says eat. It means eat. That's what it says. It says eat. Alumanda martashmish, my ocheles. According to my nokat ocheles, does the Bach. Why does it mention ocheles? If there means tashmish, say tashmish. It means cohabit, say cohabit. Why does it say eat? It says lishna ma'alya. It's a more elevated, a more appropriate, cleaner way of saying it. Kidduchsi brings an example of a pasuk in Mishlei that gives an example of how we sometimes refer to a man who happening as eating. It says in the pasuk, "Achla umachta pia." She eats, which means she is mizmazana. She committed adultery. That's the right word. With someone. Eat calls it eating, so it's cohabiting. Umachta pia, and she wipes her mouth. V'amra lo palti oven. I didn't do any. Show me the proof. I didn't do anything. It's sort of like a symbolism to a woman who wipes herself after intercourse to hide the evidence. And she similar thing by eating. But he sees the idea that the woman who's trying to hide the fact that she committed adultery is use the terminology achla. Achla eating is often referring as a cleaner way of saying having intercourse. So sometimes you see it like that. Right. Of Shimon Gamliel Omer, sorry, Meisvei. Meisvei asks a question from the following brisa. Of Shimon Gamliel Omer, Ocheles B'Leilei Shabbos or B'Shabbos. Shimon Gamliel says that he's obligated to eat with her on Friday night and Shabbos day. Okay, well, extends what we said in the Mishnah. Not just eating with her Friday night, also Shabbos day. Okay, fine. Bishlama Lamanda Marchila, according to the Mandama Rav Nachman, it goes well if you say it means Achila, Hainu Vitanish Shabbos. That makes sense that he eats with her Shabbos morning also. El Mandam Tashmish, according to Rav Ashi, who said eating that he's required to do with her on Friday night, and Shimon Gamliel says by day too, referring to cohabiting together. Tashmish Shabbos Miyika, do we cohabit during the day? Amra Afuna said, Yisrael Kadoshim him. The people of Israel are holy. They don't cohabit during the day. So how could it be that it's referring to cohabiting by Tash Mashiva the day? Amarabba, Rabba said, B'bayis afal mutter. Even though we don't normally cohabit during the day, but in a darkened room, a room that's fully dark, it would be permitted during the day. So therefore, it could also be done during the day as well. So that's the answer to that question. Okay, so we see it's a question either means eating Friday night with her or cohabiting or perhaps both. There's an idea that that's one of his obligations to his wife. And again, yesterday we had the whole question about, wait a second, we said different types of people. So it's the simple way to do it. It's like Talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah is referring to Talmidei Chachamim, which answers the question. Okay. So let's get to the last thing the Mishnah is going to analyze. Is Im Haisa Minika. One second, let's take a look at the Mishnah. It says Minika, but the Mishnah said Minekas. No, Vimhai Minika. No, memory was not accurate. Vimhaisa Minika, it's a little bit scary sometimes. 2 days ago. Vimhaisa Minika, if she is nursing, she is a nursing woman, then we lower her requirement to work. She has additional obligations. And we add her food. So what we derive something from the fact that we have to give her more food if she's nursing. So, who is we giving her more food for? For because she's nursing. Nursing women do need more food, more calories. Or is it for the child or for her children? There are children who come along with her or are obligated for her need food. So Darash Rabbi Ula Rabba, Apischa the Benesia. Rabbi Ula Rabba, the great Rabbi Ula, Ula the Great, so the title, he made the following derivation of limud, learning. He said it at the entrance, the Pesach, of the house of the Nasi in Babel. Afal pisha amru, eight adam zan as banav v'nosa b'shem ketana. Even though we said a person is not, in the strict letter of the law, not obligated to feed his children who are above the age of 6, though we kind of looked very poorly on him and we kind of forced him to do so, as we discussed before. But from the strict letter of the law, he's not financially obligated to provide for those children, even though if you can afford it, you have to because you're obligated to tzedakah. These children have less of an obligation, but anyway, from the strict letter of the law, above 6, one technically is not obligated to feed his children. But very young children, you have to feed. And how old is that? Ad kama. So what age? Ad ben shesh. So they're 6. Up to 6, you have to absolutely feed them. Above that is a discussion we discussed before. But until 6, you certainly have to feed. Kid Ravasi, like Ravasi said. The Ravasi, Koten ben shesh, yotze be'eriv imo. A child up to the age of 6 is yotze, is entitled to utilize, so to speak, the eruv of his mother who, we talked about yesterday, eruv tchumen, that you have the cities here and you have 2,000 amos to walk around it on Shabbos. You can't walk further than that unless you put down eruv tchum. Eruv tchum is you put down 2 meals for each person wants to use it. And from that point on, you have additional 2,000 amos. So the child, since it's dependent on the mother, automatically goes with the mother's eruv. Let's say the husband wanted to go a different direction that day, he put the first Shabbos, or her Shabbos puts in a different direction. So it goes with the mother because he's dependent on the mother for feeding, for care. So, so to explain it before you even say it inside, since the child is dependent on the mother, so that's why he goes with the mother's eruv. He's dependent on the mother, so he has to get fed by the mother. And that's why up to 6, we see that the child has to get fed by the mother. And therefore we see that a mother who's nursing, and for the nursing child and for the children she feeds, and for young children who are dependent on her, she needs additional food because the husband is obligated to feed them. So the food that he gives is actually for the children of the mother, for the nursing mother, for the child she's obligated to feed, and other children who are dependent on her. So let's read it inside. Ravasi, like Rasi said, the Ravasi, Katan ben Shesh Yotze Be'ervimo, Mimai, how do we know that? Midikatani, we see she's dependent on her, as we see in our Mishnah. Haisa Minekes, Minika, remember it that way. Haisa Minika, she is nursing woman, Poksin, La, Mimai Seyadeh, excuse me, we lessen the amount of work she's obligated to do for her husband. And we add her food allotment. My time. What's the reason we add? Isn't it because the children have to eat with her? The children are dependent on her, as we said. The children have to eat with her. So therefore, the food allotment we gives is also for her children. We have to add to her children, nursing child or other children who are dependent on her, like children under the age of 6. So we see we're giving the food for her children, not necessarily for her additional food, but for her children. So the Gemara says, no, you can't necessarily derive that. But Dilma Mishum Decholahi. Maybe you need to give her additional food. The additional food you give her when she's nursing is not for her children. It's for herself, because when a nursing woman is sort of like a chola, let's say she's weakened, and it takes a lot out of her. She needs additional, just literally calories to provide all that additional food. So the Gemara says, no, if that's true, that she was a chola, therefore you have to give her food, for her specifically, not necessarily for her children, im kain, listening, if that's the case, that it should have learned, im haisa chola. Shouldn't say im hi menika, say chola. Ma im haisa menika. Why did it say she's nursing? Why did it say that terminology? It's really because of her and her weakness, it should say so. It doesn't say that. The Gemara says, no, it's really, you can't necessarily prove from here that you have to feed your children under 6 because they're dependent on their mother, because really the extra food you give to a nursing woman is for herself. Also, why didn't it say you give it to her because she's weak? The Dilma Kamash Malon, really it's coming to teach you the Stam Menikos Cholos that Stam Menikos, the standard assumption, the way things go normally, most, put it that way, most nursing women are weakened, and therefore they need food. So therefore it's said, if she's Minika, even though the tension is to say that she is weak, but it's saying that most women are weak. So therefore, for nursing, are weakened and need additional food. So therefore, we can't derive necessarily that we give additional food for the child. So, but we're going to bring another proof. Itmar, learn the following. Amr Rav Yeshua ben Levi. Yeshua ben Levi said the following: Mosifan la yayin. That one of the things you give to her when she's nursing is you have to give her additional wine. That's a whole discussion before, but assuming she's used to drinking wine, you give her additional wine. Shayayin yafa l'chalav. This wine is good for the milk. Now, before we even get to today's medical advice, just say, because what we derive from this is that we're giving her additional food, yayin, wine in this case, was good for the milk. The milk is for the child. So we see the additional food we give her is for the child, as opposed to specifically for her. But that's what we want to derive from that. So we see that the derivation we're making from Yeshua ben Levi is that we give her additional food for her child, perhaps other children as well, that are along with her. But take a step back. Wine, we don't encourage pregnant and nursing women to drink wine, or additional wine. Certainly not what? And dry, right? Certainly a pregnant woman, you don't drink. But even a nursing mother, let's put him to sleep really good. But maybe, but not advice. Again, the medical knowledge, the medical reality then and now could have been very different. Their wine was completely different back then. Anyway, it was stronger actually. But in any case, Hadron Allah, Atalpi, we will return. That's Hashem. This paragraph. Okay, none.
Seems that what was learned so far. The man in the woman seems the woman is just there to have children, no feelings whatsoever toward them. It's a real man's world now. It's until that days of yore. So it just seems that a woman was a real second-class citizen. From what we've learned so far, from my interpretation, I'm wrong.
You could get that impression, and back then,
there seems to be any feeling between man and woman, and that's a silly word, but love, or affection. It doesn't seem to come into it.
Right. Yeah. What we are discussing here, and we often do that.
Sorry? She wants we have the number is last week clear. But not before that. Okay, but everyone has to say. No, conjugal rights. That's affection. Conjugal rights. Nothing more than that.
If I could add one point. What we're discussing here is the absolute minimum. We discussed in the Mishnah, this is the absolute minimum a husband has to provide for his wife. A husband has to, weekly he has to eat with his wife. This is like the worst case scenario, not the best case scenario. This is like the absolute minimum that you have to do. The absolute minimum is you have to feed your kids below the age of 6. I don't know what kind of person, forget Jew, doesn't feed a 7-year-old. It's an absolute, we're discuss that. What's this person? You have to provide stuff. We discuss absolute minimums here. We're not discussing ideal situations. Ideal situation, the man's going to provide for his wife and give for his kids and show affection. It's minimums. This is legal minimums. There are times when the Gemara discusses that. Love you're supposed to love your wife more than yourself. Rambam. Correct. Yeah. But the Rambam mentions a woman. The Rambam mentions a woman should go out like once a month. out of the house. They lived in small houses back then. Doesn't mean out of the yard. They had a yard or chickens or whatever, doves and whatever creatures they had. They from the field they pick stuff and draw water from their well, whatever. But to leave the homestead, as they say, in American. This is in legal terms, you learn. We're going to talk about mitzias right now. A woman finds a lost object, or you talk about we talked about damages before. You know, ideally we don't want people to go to Bezdin in the first place. Sometimes it has to happen, unfortunately. But like the whole, Baba Kama is like less than perfect. You know? Yes, all these crazy people come up with these crazy ideas and plans that they'll have to work out. What if this person, you know, people who Gomlin, you go lie in this town for me, I'll lie in that town for you. His product is top quality. You go next time, his product is that quality. Anyway, I understand what the questions are coming from. It doesn't once in a while we like to hear about the idea. Anyway, so let's go on to the Mishnah, the next parak, sixth parak. Tzia Sa'isha. So Zagdei Ligatana. Tzia Sa'isha. Umasiyah de Alabala. A woman who finds some lost object and can keep it, and her earnings go to her husband. We said that before, but we'll discuss that. The reason, so there's not Eva, that's one of the reasons we said. So there's not discord between the husband and wife. He's providing her sustenance, her spending money. So to keep it, that there's not like keep happiness, keep shalom bayis. He provides her stuff as well. He gets her. She finds something, and she finds and her certain amount of earnings. The Yerushasa, and if she has an inheritance, like from her mother's father or something like that, whatever the case may be, who ochel peros b'chayeha. She keeps the principal, and she eats the dividend. She keeps the principal, he eats the dividends. He uses the dividends, keeps the dividends. In like a field example with fruit trees, that's a classic example. Peros, the literal term. She owns the property, but he gets to eat or sell the produce of that field. What else does he get? Boshta upagma shala. If she's damaged, and there's 5 different payments they're entitled to, she gets to keep. Let's discuss these 2 for now. Boshta upagma, the payment from the embarrassment and the lessening of value, theoretical value on a slave market that she's caused as a result of the injury. Yehuda ben Beseira says, that's not, how does it work? He says, Bisman shebeseser, if the injury is not visible, she gets 2/3 of the embarrassment and boshes pagam, and lessening of value. Below echad, the husband, gets to keep one portion, 1/3. Bisman shebegolo, if it's an external injury that was caused to her, lo shnei chalakim, he gets to keep 2/3 of that payment, the embarrassment and the injury. The law echad, and she gets 1/3. Shalo, his payment, it's 1/3 or 2/3, in the case, nosen miyad, it's given right away. The shalah, and her 1/3 or 2/3, bilachach bem karka, with that money they purchase land. Hu ochel peros, and he gets to eat the dividends, the fruit, the produce, whatever it produces. That's the way it works according to Yehuda ben Beseira. Okay, so this Mishnah, Gemara is going to say that we seem to have learned certainly the first part of the Mishnah before. I'll ask that question right now. So the Gemara asks, "My kamash malak, what is the Mishnah coming to teach us?" Tanina, we already learned it before in the previous Mishnah on Daf Memvav of Beis. So the Mishnah says as follows: Av zakai bebito, the father in a girl who's a katana under the age of 12 or nara, 12 to 12 and a half, for argument's sake, call it that. He has certain rights. What's his rights? Zakai bebito b'ktusha. When he marries her off, he has the right to the shtar v'via. He gets the money from the kedushin. The shtar, he has the right to accept the shtar for kedushin, and hand her over give her over for biha, for intercourse, if that's the way that they would do kedushin, the first stage of marriage back then. Also, what else is the father's right of his daughter, this young daughter? Zakai mitziyasa. If she finds something, the father gets to keep it. We discussed that before. U'maisiyadeh, and her earnings. U'bahafaras nadara. And if she says a oath, he can annul it. Makabel is gita, and he can accept her get. However, eno ochel peros b'chaya. She owns property. She inherited or something, her mother through her mother, something like that, whatever the case may be. Eno ochel peros b'chaya. He, the father, does not eat the dividend, doesn't get to eat the produce of dividend. Nises, if a young woman gets married, and now sort of that nises sort of severs her connection financially to her father. Yeser alav habal, the husband has even more rights in the wife than were mentioned to the father. That the father got to get her earnings, and he got her mitzvah, what she finds. The husband also gets that. However, he gets one more right. Shehu ochel peros b'chaya. If she has property or dividend or assets, the husband gets to eat, utilize produce, the dividends, etc.
She owned the property. The husband gets the produce. And he said that he's going to keep the money.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Yeah. It could be that she brought into the marriage case. It could be she brought into the marriage. It doesn't have to be inheritance, but we mentioned inheritance. Yeah, by the girl talking about inheritance, but my commercial no, Habzak would beat with my say that for the Kabita Voka Paya. These says yes or let's just we'll use it like that. But in any case, there seems to be that that's exactly what we just learned before. We learned in the previous Mishnah that the husband has rights to her earnings. We learned that previously, and if the wife finds something, he gets to keep it. The husband goes to the husband. So why are we learning this again? So the Gemara says, "Boshta upagma etzrichale." We need to learn about boshta upagam. The woman is injured. Who keeps those particular two payments? According plukta Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseir Rabbanan. So machlokas, as we learned in the Mishnah, between Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseir and the Rabbanan, who gets to keep that 2/3, 1/3, or it all goes to the woman, like the Rabbanan said. But the first part of the Mishnah we learned already. You're right, but the second part was necessary, so therefore we repeated this. That's why we learned that. Okay, let's do the last maybe line and a half here. Well, get us into Sunday's doc. Tani Tana Kamei Rabba. One of the Amoraim who was a mumcha, an expert in the Brisa, said the following Brisa in front of Rabba. A woman who finds a lost item, she gets to keep it. Now that's not what our Mishnah said. But Kiva Omer Labala. Kiva said, like our Mishnah, we'll see, we'll change that in a moment, but Kiva says it goes to the husband. So Amrlay. So Rabba said to this person, saying the Brisa, Hashta, now is this true? But don't we say, Umaha Dafa, the Maisi Adahi, if Hadafa, the additional earnings above the minimum, which are the Maisi Adahi, Amr Rabbi Kiva La'atma, Matzia Lo Hoshkin, or Kiva says she gets to keep it. Certainly, wouldn't Rabbi Akiva say she gets to keep her that what she finds doesn't go to the husband? So we'll get back to this. It's Ramash right in the middle of a whole piece here that we don't discuss. It goes on for a couple lines. So we'll get back to this on Sunday, God willing. Just a reminder of our schedule next week, Sunday, as well Hashem will have Shir. Monday is Erev Chag, we won't. And Tuesday, Wednesday are also Chag, so we won't have Shir. Thursday is Talmud Dal, we will have Shir. That's a little bit tough, we'll have Shir. So next week, Sunday and Thursday, God willing. As well Hashem. Okay.